back to the She Gallery Show. Thank you for being with us today. And today we have a very special guest, Orko, who is running fashionably late. But he is on his way, so we are going to get started while he makes his way over. I had a chance to take a look at, I had a long conversation with Orko as we continue to prep and continue to celebrate this journey. We've been celebrating, for those of you who have been watching, we've been celebrating the evolution of Chicago-style graffiti. Here in Chicago, celebrating the pioneers that developed the style. And every single week, I continue to interview and have these conversations with these amazing pioneers. And before we started having this exhibition, before we started having these conversations, I've been involved with the graffiti community since I was basically came from the United States, being exposed to gangs, and then very quickly in 1992, being around crews like Cab Crew and being introduced to this freedom of skateboarding and kids just being kids and watching everything evolve. It's been quite a journey. And the more that I surround myself with the earliest pioneers, the more that this exhibition becomes more of a celebration, something more to honor. Ronnie just got here. So I just want to really thank everybody, and especially the pioneers, for working with us, and especially Orko, who has put such a dent. Somebody like Orko on Warp, who put together all of the graffiti writers from 1985 and had the first meet. Somebody like Orko, who got hit by a train, literally got hit by a train, and came back. And we are live, Orko, come on in. Fashionably late. So we're rocking with style, and we are again celebrating the Chicago style graffiti. How are you? How you doing?
I'm all right.
All right. So please remember that you are also with us live, and you can join the conversation at 312-738-1060. That phone number will be found on the bottom of the screen throughout the segment. You can also visit us at sharinghisenergygallery.net. Again, that's sharinghisenergygallery.net. If you go to our Now section, you can take a look at Family Resemblance, the Evolution of Chicago-Style Graffiti, opening March 4th, 2022. That is in conjunction of Chicago's birthday. This was done very deliberately. Everything that we are doing is extremely significant, down to the name, as you learned from our interview with Trickster Family Resemblance. There is a philosophy behind this. There is a lot of love behind this. This roster was carefully thought out because we wanted to make sure that we captivated these roots that are so important and continue to keep the essence of hip-hop alive.
Okay.
So we have Orko, who is the first all-city writer, Southsider, Northsider, influenced strictly by style by a writer named Paint. That's what led you to move over to the North Side. We have a lot of history to cover, so I'm just going to take it on over to make yourself, introduce yourself, let the people know who is Orko, for those of you who don't know, and thank you for being with us. Such an honor.
That's a question I still ask myself today. First of all, I'm a b-boy, and most graffiti writers, they were writers, and that was it. But I was a break dancer, and in my early years in San Francisco, I was a dancer that was doing the robot at Pier 39. So a lot of the style and technique and elegance that came along with it came from a group called Demons of the Minds. So as if you had the thing going on in New York with the rapping and the breaking, you had the dancing over there with the moonwalk with Michael Jackson, the robot and all that. That was on the West Coast. So when I came into Chicago, that's when the whole thing of breaking hit the scene. And I was a b-boy first. Before I was a graffiti writer. And I think this is around time 84, this is around time B Street came out. So what we would do is that we would battle each other on the south side. We didn't even know the north side existed. It was like, we didn't know. That we went downtown and we turned around and went back on the 54B train. And if you was from Inglewood, you caught the Howard A train. And if you was from Jackson Park, you caught the B train. These are all lines that don't exist anymore. And I was off the 54B, because the 54B would let you off at Cicero. And S.H.E was the king of that line at ACW. So at ACW...
All City Riders.
All City Riders, and then there's a group called BTR, Crazy Crew. And then, when you got off into that, we we ended up on the south side, and we went to go see a movie, Beach Street, and of course you're gonna throw, Dynamic Rock. I mean, the Rocksteady crew versus the New York City Breakers, and that was something. But when we watched that whole segment, there was one thing that I didn't understand is that the man pulled out some paint and wrote his name on the train, and so the breaking was gone. That day, breaking was over with. Doing nothing like that.
So you were introduced to another element of hip hop.
Yeah, but this is the third go round because my first introduction was off of Kraftwerk, which was Trans Europe Express, Clear. Like the old Dr. Dre before he created NWA. They had technical music, and he was one of those guys, Egyptian Lover. So I was involved with the whole the dance getting money thing came in '82. We were getting money out of Fisherman's Wharf because the tourists would come to see us with the tuxedos. And, I was a mascot. I wasn't on the main group, but they would point and I would pop out the box and, do all this type of stuff, and we would make a lot of money. And when I got to Chicago, I still had that we can make money off this. So when graffiti kicked in, I dived into it. And then they had a cartoon by Masters of the Universe, and that's where the little wizard character, the Orko character, would just pop in and pop out, and that was really my attitude. So I started drawing this thing, and it's funny that we got the pandemic, right? Because the cartoon itself wore a mask, and you get you got the mask, you got the thing that's kind of like a current black version of current Orko. It's like he got the mask, he got the thing, the wizard, he's in and out, and that kind of played itself into what that happened. Nice. And first of all, thanks for having me on the show anyway.
Thank you. We talk about Orko often with talking with a lot of writers, and they're like, oh, you got to talk to Orko. Orko is a 13-year-old kid, right, coming from 43rd and Cicero, right?
Yeah.
And you're influenced here, and something that I don't think that even I fully understood until, I continue to learn every single weekend. The feds, the influence of the feds. It's not to say that there were not any taggers or crews before, right? We're talking about buzz taggers, artists, but it was feds, the first creative crew that came about, that brought on productions. Is that right?
Well, let me not say this incorrectly, because you had ABC and UPS, and that was off the O'Hare line. And like I said, Fest was what we seen at that time because we had the rooftops. So we were going to downtown, you see Fest, and you see ACW. That was this train line. And one day we decided to see what was on the other side of the tunnel. And when we came up off Division.
And when you say we, who's we?
Me and Sick Nick, my partner in crime. That was my number one guy. It was me and Sick Nick.
And this is coming from the Bay?
No. Sick Nick went to Kennedy. There was two schools out of my neighborhood, and there's you had a little corner, like a square with black people. Then you had the Spanish people here, and then you had I don't know if they were skinheads. They were here, and you had to ride to Archer. You either go this way to go to Curie, or you go way down here to Narragansett to go to Kennedy. And you had the people that probably didn't have a whole lot of money, like me. We went to Kennedy, and so you had some Puerto Ricans. Some Mexican guys that was breaking dance, and then you had me and Nick. So you go here to Cicero, you go up, and then you go 54B. That was our route. Or you went to 55th, and then you went that way. And I can't say that we were the first crew to do that like that, but I think at that particular time, ABC at that time was like we couldn't understand that they had that kind of stuff going on up there. It was the closest to New York I had ever seen. Until right around the time I seen that, we ended up seeing a rooftop on the south side, and it was one like the north side, but it was done by a kid named Warp. And I was like, yo,
a kid named Warp.
Yeah, he's black. And then that was like we thought that this was a Latin thing, but then we got this brother from Cabrini that did a fly wall called Warpified. And then the reader puts out a story off the wall or something, and we flipped through the thing, and there's Trickster with a hat, kind of flipped up, and it said the Trickster, and he's sitting with a marker, or can of paint on marker. And then when I found out that Trickster was from the hood, we really was winning in because this was a popular dude, and I knew by the way of Bill Finley, I needed to get to know him. But it's hard at that time because everybody's kind of doing their own thing. This is a very split up, the Puerto Ricans, Polish, Spanish.
Segregation, Chicago.
Yeah. No, nobody was talking to nobody.
Mm-hmm.
At that time.
And so then at some point, and we talk a lot about Bill Finley, and we talk a lot about Sheldon's, which seems to be very prominent. Last week we were here with Take Two, and we were talking about what Bill Finley did at Harrison Park in 1985, put together this contest. And it was, again, Bill Finley that united the kids, right, in the streets. So it was Orko and Warp that said, we got to get all of these writers together, writers that did not know each other.
Well, no. I would say, no, he didn't.
Well, from my understanding, you said that you were going to help gather these writers, and you reached out to Bill Finley and gathered some phone numbers and word of mouth and got together a meeting with Warp.
Here's the thing. We had the green and whites. And
What's the green and whites?
The trains were green and white.
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't beat the buff. So no one had trains running except for this one kid from GBC called Crazy Man.
Mm-hmm.
He was the king of the Howard A line with just scroll drawings, no fillings, just, he had a whole 10 car running, but it was silly stuff. But he was the first one to have a whole 10 car, right? Now, as far as having a burner on the train, nothing was running because they would erase it. Mm-hmm. And I said, if we hit the yards at one time, then something's going to run. Hey, you get 200 people, something's going to run. And at this time, you had the train riders and you had the bus riders. So I initially started off as a bus rider. Write our names on the thing where you put the transfer in or the back window. The back window to this side, if you had the spot on the back window, that's where you was up. And that's what we did on the south side. We wasn't about the trains. Mm-hmm. In fact, the first time I wrote my name on a train, I was with Warp. And he took me to the Howard Racine yards. That's my yard. I came out of that yard. Mm-hmm. Now, this is pre-Trickster. I didn't know nothing about those guys, and I didn't know how to get in contact with them. So when we decided to put this meeting together, Warp, who had real big power in Cabrini, and he said, well, let's throw it a meeting. Of course, we can get all the South Side. We black. We can get those guys, but how we going to get those guys? ABC. No, ABC don't talk to nobody. It was hard to get a hold of ABC at that time. And then I said, well, maybe if we can get a hold of Trickster, we can probably figure something out. So this is a true story. So once I got Trickster,
still uniting. You don't even know.
once I got Trickster on the phone, I talked to him about it, and he said, well, come over. So I was like, man, I'm going to meet the Trickster. So
I want to meet the Trickster.
That's what his name. His name was the Trickster. If you call him Trickster, you really don't know it's the Trickster. So that's
like respect.
At this point in time,
street respect.
I wanted to paint with him, but I said, man, but we out south and it's the suburbs. We had like a building square. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit late in the industry now. I'm not going to go to jail for this. So I took a suitcase and I filled it up in the store with spray paint. So I took about 50 cans to his house. And I said, yo, you want to be the king of the line? Let's go. And we became cool. And then he brought in all those guys. But he told me that there was a chance that I could make it on ABC as a running past seeing them. So when we put the meeting together, me and Warp, and everybody met each other, we got turned down from ABC by Trickster. And me and Nick's dreams were shot. He said, but I got something better. I want y'all to be on NPC with Defsky and Train, and y'all can save my original crew. Y'all still connected to ABC, but y'all gonna be on NPC. And I was like, what? How does that work? That's two different crews, and we'll get more into that a little bit later. But that's kind of how that went.
Okay. Yeah.
So that
So uniting writers, breaking down boundaries, ethnicities, and getting together. That is a real definition of hip hop, of unity, and what that only the innovators were able to bring about because it was so brand new. So it's something that started so organically. I just want to take everybody back. This was a really good. I'm going to bring everybody back to the screen. And I'm going to play this little tiny clip here that I have for 1 second. This is Orko 4 years ago on Midway Radio.
Cool to be hip hop back then. And I remember all of the key players. I remember all of them. I mean, as though it was yesterday. And it's just certain ones that just need credit, not necessarily me, because I did so much. And it's not about me in this. It's about me giving you guys that one part of this documentary that, not saying no one's lying. I'm just saying that some people look at that thing called fame and You get further if you tell the story the way it was written. You know, like when Moses would have came out the mountain with the Ten Commandments and changed a couple things that God told him.
I don't know how much you guys were able to hear that, but what Orko is saying that he wants to make sure that credit is due, right?
Sure.
That is exactly what you were saying, and you're saying that you were there in the beginning of this hip hop development here before Common came along. You saw it happen, and you witnessed it. You saw the way that Chicago grew, not only with graffiti but with hip hop as a whole, right?
Sure.
And then you leave Chicago, 13 years old, you start living in the streets. So you really grew up in the streets. 13 years old, you go north side, you go south side, and then you also leave Chicago and you take it a step further. And I love hearing the stories about you, Sling, and Trickster, and then influencing all of the city. I hear 3 kids, right? Mm-hmm. I hear 3 friends having fun, exploring their imagination, exploring the neighborhoods, exploring the world. And Sling talks to you and he says, hey, let's go out to New York.
No, California.
To California.
Right.
You go with Trickster to New York. You get robbed in '86. You guys have completely different experiences, and you learn, and you meet some people, and then you also go to California that Sling had convinced you to go to.
No, that's not the first time. Not the first time. The first time I went out to San Francisco, there was some family issues, and I was like, I'm out of here. And so what happens is we had a terrible experience in New York. And I made a mistake and called my grandmother.
Oh.
And I told my grandmother, hey, we're stranded in New York. And she said, how in the heck can you go from bad to worse? So Trickster's eating
pomegranates.
But
you can't say bad words either. But real quick, I don't want to spend too much time talking about your experience in New York because I want to focus on that about like your influence here in Chicago and around those states. But your experience in New York was one experience, and you had a completely different experience in California, and we are in the Midwest. When you went to California with Sling, such a home Chicago body, got homesick, and he comes back, but you stood out there and you started making friends. You started networking. You used your style, right? So I love that you say you guys rocked your clothes. You guys made your own clothes. You go out there, you're looking like $1,000,000 just because you guys are creative individuals. And from there, you started networking. And there's an individual that tells you, you didn't do that. You start showing him your little black book that all writers have, that all writers know. And you start showing him your little black book, and he's like, you didn't do that. And you do his name. And then he sees, oh, crap, this guy's the real deal. So from your own skill, you're taking out and you're meeting these musicians that somehow end up taking you back to opening up doors and opportunities to now start designing clothes for people like Tony, Tupac, and now you're out there having a completely different experience that you did not expect to have. This is a different opportunity that California brought you from New York. How do you compare those opportunities? You get robbed in one place, and over here they open doors for you, and then you're in the Midwest. What was that like for you?
It was a 6-month thing. It was like I was in New York and this went bad, but we met all the main guys. Like we were in New York before New York became this hip hop multi-billion-dollar situation. We were just before it twisted, and we met all the guys, saw all the cars, and it was like we were literally living in subway art. Literally. The book was still running around on the subways. That was that.
Let's talk about subway art for the people that don't know. Martha Cooper is a photographer in New York who probably really, really helped show what graffiti was in New York. So that's and Henry Chiffon. And congratulations. We were just talking with MT from ST6 and T-Kid, who were traveling out with in Munich, Germany this past weekend, celebrating graffiti. And it's such an incredible honor to have pioneers again from a different generation that you guys paved way to. You know, and talking with these members, they say these are the writers that did this. And hearing Orko saying, he says, graffiti is only graffiti. Graffiti does not belong in galleries at all. He says graffiti is done on a subway and it is done illegally. And these are the pioneers that we are paying contribution to for these opportunities that are happening. So thank you again for that. So going back to Martha Cooper and Henry Chiffon, they open up these doors, and there was this book, this legendary book called Subway Art. And there you go, Subway Art. But you were talking about Subway Art.
Well, Subway Art was like, for me, Subway Art was personal because I didn't enjoy the book. Because the leader of CBA, which was called The Wiz, he was good with an airbrush. And here it is, me and Nick were two black kids in the black and Spanish neighborhood. And we would draw all day in class and draw all day. We would show it to him. And he'd be like, yeah, that's all right. But he had an airbrush, so every day he had a different style. So we was like, we can't catch this dude. So he was like the Bible for us. And when we got the book, we went through the book, and the book was like, I think I've seen that before. And so this dude took letters from T-Kid, Scheme, Scene, and rearranged it on his coats. And then I realized that I'm bragging about this crew, and this is a biter. And it's like the worst thing you can do on graffiti is like be a biter, and like a biter of the worst kind. Like he was like the first Xerox machine. He copied identical. And so I got so mad about it, I punched him in the mouth. So that's how that went. So Somewhere Out wasn't a good look for me. I had already seen it on his jacket.
Beautiful. Something else, we want to talk about biters and staying true and loyal. Something I hear you guys talking. You say never lose your crew, don't lose your crew. And we often talk about the feds, and sometimes we confuse the feds with the Federation crew. Feds is Forever Developing Styles, very different than the Federation crew, started by S.H.E. But something that you say, don't lose your crew, don't ever lose your crew. Now, Feds is a 3-man crew, and that is a Trickster, Slang, and Orko crew, and that is you guys still together, still working together, and all three of you being a part of this show, which means so much.
Well, here's the thing with that, not to step in here, and I don't want to say this to the public so it doesn't come off the wrong way. Trickster is like the library, and he's like really smart. Like some of the stuff he says to me, even now I have to go look up. Like, what are you talking about? So there was this whole thing about, they started calling graffiti aerosol art. And I asked him, I said, what do you mean? Isn't it a can? It's some new stuff called aerosol. So it's like it was like when Prince did 1999, and then I was at a party 1998 or 2000, 1999, I think it was 1999 or the year 2000. I thought 1999 or at 12 o'clock 2000 we all gonna die because of the song.
Y2K.
Well, the same thing happened with Trickster with the aerosol age. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He says the aerosol age, so we gotta prepare for that. So he said, Slang is gonna be animated because he draw the characters. So we're gonna do a wizard character with Slang with the cartoons. I'm gonna be gothic because I'm the letters. I'm gonna have an E on mine, and you gonna have a crystal ball with the colors coming off of it, because we're going to a new age. And this is about a month before this is supposed to kick off. So the clock is ticking. We didn't do the wall, and I just knew the next day when I woke up, we was not going to be spray paint and regular caps. That next day, we still doing the same stuff. Oh my gosh. So the Feds is based on 3 people: animated, gothic, element. The Feds, Forever Developing Styles. But we are a branch of a group called the Federation, which was the all-star dream team crew. And you can't say the Feds without saying the Federation, which was invented by S.H.E. You got that we would have never, I'm a member of the Federation. I'm just NPC. And that's it. And it has to be said that way. So if you want to join the Feds, it's not like the Feds and then you put F-E-D-S apostrophe SS, it can't be no third person. It can't be no fourth person because the way Trickster designed it. So if somebody said they on the Feds and they get this, they got to charge that to Trickster. It was his ingredients. He cooked up that meal.
Trickster seemed to cook up all the ingredients for all Chicago style, and we owe him like so much. This is so dope, and he remains so humble. So we talk about this. It's so thought out. He was like, okay, character, picking up everybody's strengths to make
that's what it was.
Beautiful production.
Well, here's the thing.
And
now.
that's what the writers do. So organically, you're like, I needed to ask permission. People don't ask permission to go write on the trains, on the walls, or wherever it is that they're writing. He was like, back then, if you're writing on walls, it better be on rooftops. That's what they were doing. But something that's so honorable within crews that it's almost like a silent code. Something that you did. You were like, I needed to ask permission to my to the people that you looked up to your crews, for yourself to evolve outside of what you were doing with your graffiti, right? That's a lot of respect.
Well, I had a problem with the art teacher saying that graffiti wasn't art, so I said I'll put the cans down, I'll pick up the paintbrush. And when I went to go meet these guys in New York, I had invested a lot of time as a teenager, and I said, Trick, let's go up there and figure out what we invest in our time in.
Yeah, let me pause there for a second. He said, this is what Orko said, because Orko got an F in a midterm when he was trying to show off his graffiti skills. And after he got an F, he dropped out, and he said, I'm going to go after the art world, because you said that graffiti artists could not qualify in the art world. So I put the spray can down and I picked up everything they had.
Yeah.
And I went after them.
Yeah, that's what writers do. You take all of this, right, and then you say we're not a part of that thing. When we're the only American art form that there is. Painting the face didn't start in America. That's London and Michelangelo and Picasso.
That's
that
crazy dedication,
it
man.
came,
That's
it
crazy
came from,
dedication.
It came from here, right? And then you say we're not a part of it. Like jazz and graffiti is one and the same. And to take a kid from a project and shoot their dreams down because they innovated something, and then now one of the biggest stars in the art movement is a Haitian kid in New York dressing like the Marley family called Jean-Michel Basquiat. He's a graffiti writer. So now y'all took one of our guys and made him popular, but he sell $1 million paintings. He's no longer here, but that's not art. But now y'all just made an exception. Now it's big. Wait a minute, you lied to us. So, whereas if a lot of these cats, you kill a person's confidence with that. You were like, after graffiti, a lot of my friends went to jail and died. It was like, after graffiti, it was just like, what are you going to do now?
And something else very interesting that you mentioned, hip-hop. Hip-hop, we're talking about the elements of hip-hop. We're talking about the MC, the DJ, the MC, the breakdancing, the graffiti, and then, of course, unity, wisdom, love. And that's what's supposed to unite all of it. Graffiti has always seemed to be, left out or always at the bottom, always the underdog of this hip-hop movement. And in Chicago seems to also be an underdog for this hip-hop movement. So we're talking about serious underdogs that are seriously underground. And something very interesting that you say, it's because of the people itself. It is the people that made this movement, and it is the people that control this movement, that have power over this movement. Now, when graffiti writers or anybody that's in the hip-hop genre but is not using that element of unity and knowledge of wisdom, then it kind of falls apart because you're not evolving that to the next youth because of power trips. So something that you said was that the writers don't honor their masters, and that's not to say like, oh, honor thee, but to learn from the masters, right? Can you talk a little bit more about that? I know we only have a few minutes left, and I want you to explore a little bit more about your feel on Chicago style graffiti and where graffiti has gone since you watched it develop. I mean, you've watched it not just in Chicago, but all through the States.
Well, let me just get this out here.
Yes, please.
You don't have to listen to rap music or breakdance to be a graffiti artist. I got some graffiti artists that's probably never listened to rap music. They may be listening to Bono, Sting, or Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin. But these boys got style too. You don't have to just be from the projects to do graffiti. So if you put that in the projects with an MC and a breakdancer, you're shortening that whole thing because that's how come with so much style. This guy's listening to the Police or whatever, but he got top to bottom whole cars and his arrows is ridiculous. Then you got the kid from the projects that's listening to Run DMC. They still have style. So graffiti it was the first one. So rapping and breaking came after us. So that's how that goes. You know what I mean?
We only have 1 minute left, and something else going back to the genres, we're talking about Common, or in listening to your earlier interview, Common, who is from Chicago. There was an album that he did that was not necessarily just hip-hop rap as we know it. It sounded kind of like rockish, and that helped his range, that helped build range and audience, which also helped him succeed. So that's something else to point out. Now, we only do have 1 minute left. Can you leave the audience with anything else that you would like to share from your history?
I spent a lot of time representing Chicago before anybody went to California, and I went to New York to ask permission to go into the art industry, and I'm just curious about the future of what writers are doing nowadays. And after being nearly hit and killed by a train, once I passed that test, I realized I'm necessary here, and I'm just happy that my crew accepted me, and I'm one of the Southside cats that had a dream. And Trickster picked me up, Slang embraced me, and Defsky made me like the leader of MPC, and I just lived the Forrest Gump life with that thing, and I'm just happy that it came out of Chicago. That's just what I like to leave.
Thank you, Orko. Sorry that went by so fast. We plan to have more information on our website, and we also have an upcoming lecture with our partners at the Epiphany Center where we look forward to having Orko with Trickster, Sling, B-Boy B, and Pengo for our first round as we continue to celebrate the Chicago style of graffiti. Thank you.